Hi, dears. Well, many of you know what the Holy Sepulchre Church looks like. And I'm sure some of you have asked the question, like to yourselves, like, why does it look so, I don't know. Well, even to me, when I first saw the church, I mean, obviously, well, I knew what it looks like, but when I saw the church for the first time and with my own eyes back in January 2012, 2012, I, I really just couldn't get it. I couldn't see the entire building. I assumed that if it's the holiest site for all Christian, it had to be something absolutely opulent. It's like like St. Peter's in Rome, right? It had to be something grand, big, enormous, and opulent. That was my thinking. And at that point, I didn't even live. I wasn't living in St. Petersburg then, so it wasn't really my kind of imperial thinking. No, at that point, it wasn't the case. So, but I was hoping to see something different. But this is what it is. So the holiest site for Christians all around the world, regardless of the denominations, looks like that. It's impossible you know, to actually see the entire building and from all sides, and you cannot really see it from all sides, but it looks different. And unless when you see the two big domes with a cross on the top, well, it looks like many other buildings in the old city, trust me. So I would say the building it's not like it's very inconspicuous, but I would say it probably looks, I don't know, it looks very old, it looks very complex, and it only reflects the complex history of the area and the land. Um, Even though Herod the Great in Christianity, and we have to always differentiate between, let's say, Christian narrative, the Jewish narrative, and also we have to differentiate between the Holy Scripture, well, between, let's say, the biblical source and the extra biblical source, mean archaeology, which is the most important focus of this tour altogether. It's not about trying to say whether the religion is wrong or religion is right, or Via Dolorosa is just a tradition and there's no archaeology. It's not the case, it's not about that. Actually, there's been a lot of archaeology discovered. It's not that it always supports the crusader narrative and Catholic tradition with the Via Dolorosa, but definitely this is the city. And yes, there is also an alternative side to the Holy Sepulchre Church. Well, to the not the church, but the alternative side to the place of the entombment of Jesus, and we're going to visit it at some point again. It's called Garden Tomb, but most scholars agree that that's the place. Why Herod the Great? So Herod the Great in Christian narrative is known as the violent tyrant, as the one who attempted to kill Jesus. And he is the one who arranged that, massacre of the innocents. And according to different sources, Herod the Great ordered to kill from uh, 2,000 to 14,000, babies. Um, and I would say there's no any evidence found for that fact whatsoever. But what we have is just several written sources. This is it. But for our narrative in terms of archaeology and architecture, Herod the Great is very important because he is known as also the great builder of Jerusalem, of the Holy Land in general. So you remember that Herod the Great is the one who actually enlarged the Temple Mount, extended the temple, the second temple, and that's why they say there are kind of two versions of the second temple. So that's the second version of the second temple that was built well, in the first century BCE. And here is the thing. So we are really not far from the Temple Mount where we are, and we know that there were a lot of quarries in the vicinity of the Temple Mount from where the stone for the Temple Mount was taken, and there was a quarry Actually, that quarry had been there most probably way before Herod, but we know that for some time until they hit the bedrock, it would be one of the quarries used for their Temple Mount construction. And we believe, and not me, I say the community, the archaeologists believe that exactly on the spot of that old and already obsolete quarry, uh, well, kind of this place was forsaken, and it was kind of a bit of a wilderness. It was the area outside of the city walls, and there was some sort of a garden. There was, some area was elevated because of the bedrock, and well, there would be some caves and so on. And the big road, the popular trade route around the city would also go along the walls and past the garden. So, and it is exactly believed the place where the Golgotha, so that elevation, that bedrock elevation that remained after the quarry works, that was exactly the place where that the Romans would use for executions. They needed a place to be elevated. They needed a place to be outside of the city walls, but they also needed it to be seen by as many people as possible. And the road past the walls, well, the second wall we see here, but that was a very big road, and it would be, well, hundreds of people, thousands of people would use this road on a daily basis. So, and indeed, there was found, well, this is the outline of the city of the times of Jesus. So we are talking here, well, up until, let's say, year 40 common era. That's what it looked like. So this is it. And there used to be a garden gate, a gate from the city limits that would take people outside of the city walls. And indeed, there were found the remains of the garden gate. So indeed, there is archaeology, there is extra biblical proof to the events described in the New Testament. This is the model of the Second Temple period in the Museum of Israel in Jerusalem. The thing is that when the model was placed, they hadn't found the garden gate. But there is a Golgotha. You see the Golgotha, and not far from there, there is a garden gate. So where the wall kind of turns. But again, as I said, it's not really placed there on the map because it hadn't been found when they were putting up the model together in the territory of the museum. By the way, last year I did quite an extensive tour about the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. We saw lots of archaeology. Not only that, also the historian Josephus Flavius, who was the historian during times of Jesus, he also mentioned a garden gate. He also mentioned the place. Well, basically, he just mentioned everything that we have just spoken about. So there was a garden gate, there was a garden, there was the place for executions by the Romans. So that's pretty much the same narrative. And that's what it's kind of the visual aids that I'm using. It all come from the open sources. And I don't have any infographics done by myself. So the footage that I'm showing you, it's my video, I don't know, made about 2 years ago, I think. And I also add, some new photographs and some other schemes for better understanding. So that's what it looked like. It was, again, the elevation for executions. There would be some wilderness, some trees, and also there were some caves with the burials. And we know that it was a very common case, for Jews to do burials in caves. That was a very common thing. Again, what the city looked like. By the way, that's going to be interesting. So let's include also the Gethsemane garden. So the yellow thing, I know you don't really see the mouse. So I'm going to be as descriptive as possible. The area outlined with yellow, this is exactly what the city, old city looked like. You see the Temple Mount, you see everything, and clearly from here you see that the Garden Gate and Golgotha, meaning that old obsolete quarry, it was outside of the city. That was the main thing, and this is, I would say, well, a big argument. Uh, many claim that how is it possible that the Holy Sepulchre Church is the site of the crucifixion if it is within the old city? Now you know that it's not the case. So it was not within the city limits at that point. Let's read John chapter 19, verse 20. Many of the Jews read the sign, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. There's one more thing that I would like to add. You know that the Gospels, well, many of you know Gospels very well. So, but I still would like to provide some quotes which I think are quite relevant. So in Matthew we read, when it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. But he couldn't really say that, obviously, but we know that he was. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. So this already the times after the execution. I remind you, this is Friday. This was just after the Passover Seder, and in general, Jews try to bury to do burials within the same day as the person passed away, the same day. And the things were even more complicated because it was Friday. It was they had to do it before the Shabbat, so the execution took place in the morning, and by the evening they already had to get done with the burial, so they had to be really quick. So he went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered the Pontius Pilate ordered to be given that the body would be given to him. And Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen shroud and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. So they were in such a hurry that there was no really time to carry the body of Jesus anywhere, and that really saved them the time to bury Jesus not really far from the place of the execution. And in Matthew, I would say, clearly describe how the burials would be done. A body would be just wrapped up in a shroud and put into a cave. That was it. And the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is built on top, above the places of execution and the entombment. This is again, these visual aids I've taken from the website, the Holy Land site. I really like the way they provide, visual materials, and you can find a lot on their website. I think these ones are probably the best. So here you can see, I think it's pretty much clear. You don't really need the pointer. So you see Calvary, Golgotha, right there, which means the skull. It's not really explained, much why it's called so, as if probably it looks like a skull. There is no really any comparison to the skull of exactly that particular bedrock. However, the alternative side of the crucifixion, known as the Garden Tomb, out just next to the Damascus gates outside of the old city. Well, that skull, that part of bedrock looks very much like the skull. So that's why there are some, I would say there is some food for thought with regards to that site as the possible Golgotha. And you see the tomb of Jesus. This is the Aedicule, that is built above the site where the grave was. That's what it looks like from the top. So Calvary, you see that this is like the Holy Sepulchre Church, the way it looks nowadays, quite complex, a lot of chambers, a lot of layers. You don't really see, but there are different floors there as well. So, but we're going to see it when we are there. It's it's not so easy to follow this particular schemes. And well, Herod Agrippa, who was descendant of Herod after Herod passed away, Herod Agrippa the first, he is the one responsible for the expansion and the extension of the old city of Jerusalem. He built the kind of the third wall, so to speak. You see it here on the model of the Second Temple period Jerusalem. So that area outlined with the black, you can see that's the area that was included in the old city limits after year 40 AD. So after Jesus's crucifixion. And here on this map, you can see the outline. So this area with orange line, that's the new city limit. And this is when the Calvary and the garden was included in the old city limits. But before that, that was not the case at all. Now, let's remember Emperor Hadrian, who in 135 completely destroyed Jerusalem and rebuilt it into a pagan city. Let's put it like that. He didn't really follow, I would say, much of the outline of Herod Agrippa's, but nevertheless, the old city was definitely bigger than it was during times of Jesus anyway. But the idea was to erase any memories of Judea, of Jews in Jerusalem, and to just make sure nobody would remember any Jewish worship. He put the temple of Jupiter on the Temple Mount, and he built also another pagan temple on the spot of the Holy Sepulchre. Well, not the whole. There was no Holy Sepulchre church at that point, of the place of the crucifixion, because um, immediately after the crucifixion and the following events, that place where it happened became kind of a secret pilgrimage. So started there because people knew and people would pass it on orally, because the Christianity was all persecuted. It was all, well, it wasn't even called Christianity at that point. So, but it was all very dangerous. So people could not leave any written evidence whatsoever. So it would be only an oral tradition. And then much further during the Byzantine period, when building a lot of, pilgrimage sites and holy identification of the holy site, they would actually, I would say, rely on the tradition that was still quite strong ever since the first century AD. So B is the Golgotha. You can see that it was on the top of the Golgotha, he placed the statue of Jupiter, and also there was a temple of Venus built on the area. So there was no way one could access any place related to Jesus whatsoever, because of the pagan worship going on, the pagan temple, so temple of Venus, and the statue of Jupiter. It was built basically atop the bedrock. And also, the pagan city built by Hadrian, Aelia Capitolina, was built according to the Roman laws, according to just Roman principles. There had to be a main road, the main road called Cardo Maximus. And I quite often asked whether cardio actually means heart, because this is kind of some of the most important organs in the body, right? And the main street is also very important. It has nothing to do with the heart. It actually comes from the word cardinus, hinge, which means hinge. So we can say that cardo was kind of a hinge that just held the doors to the city. That was it. So it has nothing to do with the heart. And yes, we have found that that cardo. The cardo is pretty much here present on the Madaba map, which you all know very well. There is not a well. I can never. I have to speak about Madaba map on practically every tour in Jerusalem because it's some of the most important, I would say, images and maps of Jerusalem in the Byzantine period, because basically this map found on the floor, well, it's basically a floor mosaic found in one of the churches in Jordan, and it shows you Christian holy sites around the world. And obviously, we are so lucky to have that the part of the mosaic where Jerusalem has been preserved. So you see the long line. This is the famous Cardo Street, and in the center of it, like there is a elongated construction. This is the Holy Sepulchre Church, and the to the left, the place where the church be started. This is the Damascus Gate, or well, Bab al-Amud, or the gate of a pillar, which we spoke about before. And so now let's get to Emperor Constantine. So we are in the 4th century already. We know that Constantine's mother, Helena Augusta, in around year 300, she set off on a journey to the Holy Land in an attempt to find the places related to Jesus. And her trip was very successful. Helena is often referred to as the very first archaeologist of all times because she was able to find uh, everything that she was looking for. The crosses, the cross on which Jesus was crucified. She was able to find the place where Jesus was born in Bethlehem. She found many places. So amazing, absolutely. She was the luckiest archaeologist of all times, the luckiest archaeologist ever. So she identified the place where everything happened, and she also relied on basically asking the people, trying to well find out what the oral tradition had, and she identified the place. But there had been a pagan temple built. So it took them quite a lot of time to tear down everything built by Hadrian. And in order to eliminate any memory of the pagan worship, they took it down brick by brick and got rid of the stones. They didn't use, well, they could have used the stones and it would have saved them so much time and so much money, but they didn't want to have anything to do with the pagan worship, and they got rid of all the stones. And that's why there is no archaeology whatsoever with regards to the Temple of Venus and the statue of Jupiter on the site, because Helena did a very good job. By 335 AD, the Holy Sepulchre Church was built, and it looked very different, and it was triple the size of the current Holy Sepulchre Church. It had a big courtyard. It had a lot of things. So I've just included this scheme. I think this is the one. This is the scheme I found on Wikipedia. So Wikipedia is not the most reliable source, but when it gets to well some visual aids, it comes in handy. Well, if you check it thoroughly, obviously. So, what do we have? So the most important part is clearly there. Well, okay, there are many important parts, but you see the rotunda. So rotunda is basically the place where the Aedicule now is, where the dome now is. So the dome of the current church. So this is the empty tomb of Jesus in the Holy Sepulchre. Then there was included the Calvary, and there was another basilica, there was the atrium, there was a big place of gathering. So that church was supposed to fit in and house then, I would say, every Christian in the world. Again, it was triple the size. So the current church basically covers the area of A and B, and a little bit of and a little bit more, but that was it. Uh, Basically, the territory of the old Holy Sepulchre would reach the the city wall, the second wall, and that was it. Way bigger, way bigger. But for some reason, the church doesn't look the same way. So let's find out what happened to it. But first of all, let's see what it looked like uh, from the inside. Quite opulent, the gorgeous courtyard, the well, just incredible. And you could see I think you can easily find uh, the Golgotha. The Golgotha is still there. It's still the same bedrock. It hasn't gone anywhere. But the church did disappear. So first of all, it was destroyed in year 1009, and it was destroyed by one of the Muslim leaders, Al-Hakim, and that was exactly the reason for the Crusaders to begin. It took them some years. Well, it took almost a century for Rome to put everything together, equip everyone, and launch the crusade. Eventually, by 1099, the Crusaders reached the Holy Land, took over Jerusalem, and they immediately, got down to the restoration of the church. So, rebuilding of the church. So, 1099, by 1112, they had already started, and it took them less than 50 years. So the church was rebuilt by let's say 1149. That's let's say the dates everyone agrees on, more or less. So let's stick to those dates. Why not? But it was way smaller because there was just no opportunities, no technical opportunities, and there were no funds, not enough money for the Crusaders to rebuild the church the way it looked during times of Constantine and Helena. So it's way smaller. It's like 1/3 from the uh, old sides of the church, but it contained the place at the tomb of Christ. It had the Calvary, so the most important places were included, and that was it. So basically, the church has been standing like this ever since. Obviously, there also were several earthquakes in Jerusalem. It's quite, I would say, seismically challenging area. There's quite seismic activity, and there have been also other issues with regards to the renovation of the dome and everything. But I would say, in a nutshell, it's the same church as it looked during the Crusader times, with some minor changes, I would say. And if you remember, last time we finished on station number 9, and that's exactly where the 9 stations of the 14 are. Ninth station is where Jesus fell down for the 3rd time, and he was just about to go up the Calvary. Where are we? So we are about to visit an interesting village called Deir Sultan. And Anna, you are supposed to take us to the Holy Sepulchre Church. Like, what are you talking about? What village? The Ethiopian Christian village located on top, on the roof of the Holy Sepulchre Church. Welcome to the Holy Sepulchre Church. This is probably some of the most unusual entrances. And when I was there for the first time, back in 2012, I couldn't really believe it. I just couldn't wrap my mind around it, that there was a village on top of a church, and the people lived there, the monks lived there on the roof. Like, what? And uh, right now, as we are standing facing the Christ the Redeemer church bell tower, over there you see the big building top, the big tower in the center of the frame. So we are, well, behind us is the Coptic Christian community, Christian community from Egypt, one of the most ancient Christian communities in the world. And uh, this area, everything about the Holy Sepulchre Church is pretty much contentious anyway. Everything about the Holy Land is pretty much contentious, but but this is the dome you can see here. This dome belongs to actually to Armenians. We are on the territory of, let's say, Ethiopian Christian community compound, and in the very heart of it, you see a dome that belongs to Armenians because it is standing above the place where Helena Augusta discovered the cross on which Jesus was crucified. We are going to talk about it on the second tour because we're not going to finish it all tonight. And there was not, I knew I would never be able to do that. And I want to provide a detailed account, a detailed story because I can. Normally, there's never really a luxury like that. There's never really enough time. Uh, so I'm using it right now and abuse it also. I think it's opportunity. The Ethiopian Christian community was allowed in Jerusalem and was given, let's say, the place and the old city of Jerusalem by the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik and Marwan. That was like there. Well, that was it's been for about let's say 13th century, and well, and still there are some disputes between the Ethiopians and the Copts with regards to the territory, whether this is their compound or not their compound, but nevertheless, this is the Holy Sepulchre roof. And now we are going to explore the church, but we're going to start with the Ethiopian chapel of the Holy Sepulchre Church. We are on the, I don't know, third floor, maybe? It's really hard to say. And what we see is quite curious. So first of all, let me just pause here. If you look at the on the ceiling, and on the ceiling you see an interesting kind of a capitale of a column. So that's the so-called elbow columns, and this is a very typical feature of Crusade architecture. So you see that there is still like a lot, if not almost everything, from the Crusader times. So this is the Holy Sepulchre Church. This is the Crusader columns. They're still here. It's been like this for almost, yeah, for almost 1,000 years. Quite incredible. And speaking of Ethiopians, there's also very strong presence of Ethiopian Jews. As you know, Ethiopian Jews are recognized by halakha, by Israeli laws, and the Ethiopian Jews have the right to make aliyah, and they are eligible for the citizenship of Israel. And but there's also there because there is strong connection also mentioned in the Old Testament, the story with Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and they had a child. And also, according to a tradition, the tabernacle, actually, one that we believe is lost, is actually stored in Ethiopia. Well, it's a tradition. Nobody's allowed to see it, obviously. And well, but that's the story. So Ethiopian presence is very strong in the Holy Land. Anyway, both within the Christian narrative and within the Jewish narrative. The I would put it like that. So the Ethiopian presence is, well, let's say about 800 years in Jerusalem. But obviously the Christianity in Ethiopia is way older than that. And as we go, you see the cross of the Hospitallers order, because again, I remind you, this is the Crusader period architecture. And now we are on our way because we are like on the third floor of the Holy Sepulchre Church. We were on the roof, and now we need to go down and down and down. And eventually we will find ourselves in the courtyard of the Holy Sepulchre Church. Icons are quite specific. Let's say this is interesting because okay, you see kind of the altar, and you see some sort of the Stargate, some sort of it looks very different from what we are used to, let's say in the Western world, but it really has the same idea. Obviously, the different, some practices are different. The interior is also quite different, but it's still a fully recognized Christian sorry, denomination in the world. And their presence in the Holy Sepulchre Church is quite strong. That's just in a nutshell that I wanted to say about the Ethiopian Christian community. Welcome to the courtyard of the Holy Sepulchre Church. Well, let's put it like that. Let's first of all talk about what we see around the church, because this is also very important. And you can see the complex architecture, right? The different kinds of stones, the different color of the stones. That's because, as I said, the church has endured quite a number of reconstructions, additions, adjustments, and repair works, again, due to multiple things, as well as just, well, the earthquakes, as I said. But in a nutshell, so you can identify, I would say, the oldest parts and the darkest parts of the Holy Sepulchre Church, for sure. The over here is an interesting thing. So as I said before, and I'm going to repeat myself, that the Holy Sepulchre Church is divided among many denominations. And this is the, probably it's even more contentious than the Temple Mount itself. Uh, so basically, Temple Mount, okay, it's mostly just okay, between Muslims and the Jews. But of the Holy Sepulchre, it's all about Christianity, but there are so many denominations and there are so many disputes around this church that it was absolutely essential for the Ottomans to introduce the so-called status quo. It was the Ottomans that in the 19th century allowed pilgrimage to the Holy Land and the purchase of the Holy Land, purchase of the land, and for the further development of Christian communities, schools, monasteries, educational facilities, whatsoever. And the status quo was absolutely essential. And here we can see how it works at its best. So, for example, you see that window. That window belonged to the Armenian church. The Armenians wanted to fix the window. That happened somewhat definitely before 1700s. We have no idea when it happened. But the thing is, in order to fix the window, they had to use the Greek Orthodox cornice. You see, so every part of the Holy Sepulchre Church belongs to a certain Christian community. And they needed to ask the Greek Orthodox if they were okay with the Armenians to put to put the ladder and fix the window that belongs to the Armenians. And the Greeks were very much against it. So they were ordered to keep the ladder there. And it's been like this ever since at least 1700. So the state, well, okay, let's put it like that. The status quo and let's say the basic ideas of how the Holy Sepulchre work should operate actually were identified even by, well, let's say in the 13th century. Let's put it like that. But the Ottomans significantly well, I would say developed it. So by the time the Christian communities arrived to Jerusalem, there had already been a clear understanding, the clear layout of the city, of the old city, and that made things a lot easier for the settling of the communities. But yes, it was essential for the Muslims to identify um, how Christians would use the Holy Sepulchre Church and the legal grounds for that. So let's just put it like that. And in 1725, we see the engraving of the Holy Sepulchre Church with this ladder there on the window. You can see that. Then in the 19th century, we have the illustration of the Holy Sepulchre Church, and there's this this ladder is still there. Obviously, it's not one and the same letter. I'm pretty sure the letter has been changed a couple of times at least because it must have disintegrated. But it's still there. So this kind of shows you how important that status quo is, how absolutely fundamental this is. Well, when Helena Augusta in the 4th century built the Holy Sepulchre Church, they built it with the new stones. They made sure not a single stone from the pagan temple would be used in the construction of the Christian church. But the Crusaders didn't really bother. So they used any construction material available, and they would use Byzantine period columns, they would use Muslim period columns or whatever, well, whatever there was available. There wasn't really much to choose from. And they built up still the beautiful church. And now another question is, why on earth next to the Holy Sepulchre Church in the Christian quarter? So the Holy Sepulchre is indeed in the Christian quarter, in case you wondered. There is no, I would say, issue about that. Why is there a mosque? That's a good question. And the mosque is there because of Caliph Umar ibn Khattab, who came to Jerusalem. So that's the second Muslim period. And that's the first Muslim period. I just didn't go into detail. So the first Muslim period, that's starting from the 7th century up until the arrival of the Crusaders in 1099. Let's put it like that. And the second Muslim period started after the Crusaders were ousted, that is the 13th century. However, the Crusaders would lose the control over Jerusalem in the 12th century. And they would just remain in control of the coastline. And they had the right, to visit Jerusalem. The pilgrims were allowed to visit Jerusalem. However, that was not the same. So in the 7th century, Caliph Umar ibn Khattab came to Jerusalem. There had already been the Holy Sepulchre Church standing for several centuries, and the Sophronius of Jerusalem, the Patriarch Sophronius of Jerusalem, asked whether the new, let's say, owners of the Holy Land wanted to pray in the Holy Sepulchre Church. And that was not, it wasn't really a bizarre thing because, in fact, Islam, being the youngest of the three Abrahamic religions, recognizes Judaism, recognizes Christianity, but in Islam, well, the saints and the King David and Solomon, they are considered as prophets, basically. And Jesus was also basically a prophet. So Sophronius asked whether he wanted to pray in the Holy Sepulchre Church, but this is just a legend. That's a beautiful legend. He said no, because if I pray in the church, they would build a mosque on top of the place where I prayed. and they would have to tear down the Holy Sepulchre Church or rebuild part of the Holy Sepulchre Church, and he benevolently prayed outside of the Holy Sepulchre, and on the spot where he prayed, well, the mosque was built. But again, as I said, it's just a legend, but it's a beautiful legend, so it kind of explains you how diverse Jerusalem is. And this is also part of the Armenian compound. You know, Armenians have their own quarter in Jerusalem. So Armenians were the first nation to adopt Christianity as their state religion. So the presence in Jerusalem of the Armenians is the longest, and that's why they deserve their quarter in Jerusalem. That's how it goes. I just need a second. Hold on. My battery is almost dead. Give me a minute. And I remember I owe you a Q&A, so we are going to have a longer Q&A very soon. But first, let's finalize the talk about the history of the Holy Sepulchre Church. I mean, we haven't even started within the church, so we are talking about it, which is quite important because if you just go inside without all these explanations, it wouldn't really make much sense. So again, as I said, I'm using and abusing my opportunity to give you the full account, well, as much as I can, as much as we have, the information at our disposal. So I'm using this opportunity. So there is a place also even before you enter the Holy Sepulchre. It really stands out. And there is a pillar. Actually, this is station number 10 of the Via Dolorosa. Jesus is stripped of his garments. So after Jesus fell down for the third time, he stood up. He reached the foot of the Golgotha hill, and he would be stripped of his garments, and then he would have to go up to you get the idea. He would have to be placed on the cross, would have to be lifted up and executed there. That's the idea. This is still out. Well, this is kind of it's a chapel outside of the Holy Sepulchre, but it is part of the church, obviously. However, there is no really entrance there. I've never been inside, but you can see what the chapel looks like from the church. So there is a way to do that, and the steps it belongs to the Catholic, to the Catholic Catholic Christians. Here are the steps. Well, you can go up, and you can come close and you can see, and from here you kind of have a good overview of the construction site. So the construction hasn't finished yet. When I was there in the church. A month ago, well, this summer, they covered the entire floor of the church with wood, because they were working on the floors of the church, and alongside with the work of the change of the floors in the church, they also did some excavations. There's always something, but they haven't published their discoveries yet. I will try to put everything we have so far and share it with you for the next tour. So I know a couple of people to ask, but officially the reports haven't been published, and it's going to take some time for the official reports to be published. That's how it works in Jerusalem. They must have made some more groundbreaking discoveries now with regards to I know they have, be it the Temple Mount, not the Temple Mount, sorry, be it the Tower of David or anything on the Holy Sepulchre, but we are to know about this many years later because they still have not processed and put it all in writing, so we don't know that yet. And this is the courtyard. Here used to be back in the times of Constantine and Elena, it was an opulent courtyard, so the big church, but not anymore. This is believed to be the Crusader design, so the Crusader entrance, and this is one of the oldest parts of the church. This interesting marks above the sealed entrance. So there used to be two, well, kind of the two entrances. But in the 13th century, they were also the entrance was that entrance was sealed, and there's only one and the only entrance left. With regards to the marks, it's nobody knows what these marks are. Now, to me, the marks above the sealed gate looks like the Georgian cross, the Saint Nina cross. And it kind of makes sense because Georgian presence was also quite strong in Jerusalem. And, well, Georgians they actually were the second nation to adopt Christianity as their, well, official religion. And we spoke about it in details on my tours, well, about Georgia, such as the tour about Mtskheta, which was the ancient capital of Georgia. So, and it wouldn't surprise me, all these Georgian crosses. They look like Georgian cross for sure, but we will see another lintel over the actual entrance, and then it will look different. So it's not really, I would say, consistent. My theory doesn't really hold the water, let's put it like that. There are more crosses. You see a crusader cross, right? And also you can see a lot of engravings, and someone just etched it in the stone here and there, chiseling their names, chiseling the crosses. This could have been made yesterday. This could have been made 500 years ago. No idea. But well, for many pilgrims, it was the trip of their lifetime. Many people died on their way to the Holy Sepulchre Church and to Jerusalem. So I guess it's kind of clear where all these marks come from and why they're there. So as you see, above that lintel, the design is quite the opposite. So we don't know really what those marks are. This is a big mystery. No, it kept me awake for some time. I really tried to understand what was going on there. We don't know. This is one of the biggest mysteries of the Holy Sepulchre Church. Why? Um, what are these marks about? Saladin. So now I can finally introduce this gentleman to you. So the Saladin from the Ayyubid dynasty, well, also coming from Egypt. He was exactly the one in the 13th century who defeated, let's put it like that, he ousted crusaders from Jerusalem, but he benevolently let them still come to Jerusalem. The pilgrimage was still possible. However, he is also the one who sealed the entrance, that one entrance to the Holy Sepulchre Church. He is the one who, let's say, introduced the status quo. And he appointed two Muslim families in charge of the Holy Sepulchre Church gates. And ever since that time, so for almost 1,000 years, okay, well, almost 1,000 years, the descendants of these two families are in charge of opening and closing the doors of the Holy Sepulchre Church. And this is a big ceremony. This is a big deal. And that's just uh, one of the pillars of how things work in Jerusalem. Just that. So these are the doors. The two families have the keys, the Jude and the Nuzebe family. So I just even put it here because, well, these names are not so easy to remember. So the Jude responsible for opening and closing the main door, Nuzebe family, has held the key to the church entrance since Saladin. So Nuzebe are in charge of the keys, Jude are in charge of the opening and closing ceremony. That's a big deal, this is just a very big deal. And I never saw the church opening, but I saw it closing. And yes, this is the photo from the Ottoman period. You can see it clearly because of the tarbush that the man is wearing. And that's, well, I love this photo very much, very much. it still looks pretty much the same, I would say. Pretty much the same. Um, I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, so I think now it's time for us to almost wrap it up, but we still have one thing to do with a tomb, a tomb of a crusader, uh, Philip d'Aubigny. So there is a tomb. There's a person buried there, just outside the church. He was a righteous Christian who did a lot for the Crusader community in Jerusalem. So he died. He was buried by the church, and this is how I would say he was he was paid tribute for the fellow for the by the, from the fellow by the fellow Christians, and being buried next to the Holy Sepulchre Church was the greatest honor one could be given. And well, this grave was well, for a long time it was kind of forgotten, but then it was rediscovered. And this is the photo that actually they indeed found the grave of Philip d'Aubigny. This is the photo of the Ottoman period. I'm not entirely sure which year, but well, these photos I found on one of the archives of in the archives, and also it's present in the I think you can even find it on Wikipedia. I'm not entirely sure, but the grave is there, so you can see it. Now it's covered with wood. I'm not sure if they're going to do anything with it. Maybe at some point they will, but as of now, it's very, I would say, inconspicuous. Okay, this is where we wrap this up. So even though we kind of have not really entered the Holy Sepulchre Church, the entire tour was about the Holy Sepulchre. We kind of have been inside. I mean, we've been in the Ethiopian chapel. We were on the roof. We spoke about everything around the church, and it is just as important as what's inside the church. Okay, let's have the Q&A. Here we are. So next time I will share the links again because for those who joined a little after we started, well, I don't think you can actually see the chat. So I'm going to share the links again. No, so for the next weekend, I have just a couple of tours scheduled, including the next episode of the Holy Sepulchre. There you go. Starting from next week, where I'm back to my previous schedule, so it's going to be Sunday and just 30 minutes um, later than we did it actually today. It's going to be 11 p.m. The Tbilisi time, which is GMT plus 4, but I know it's really confusing for the most of you, so just stick to the Eventbrite schedule or the schedule you were used to before, let's say before September or before October. Uh, Had the weirdest hairstyle. Hopefully, it's Salahuddin. Yeah, that's just. Yeah, I know. This is I think this is just a headpiece. I don't think this is I don't think this is his hairstyle, but I like this artwork. I mean, it's a nice portrait. Yes, it's a really weird thing. It's like a big onion on his head, but like a crazy onion. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much. And believe it or not, I always learn something new when I prepare for my tours. You know, there's a lot of preparation that I have to do before every tour because there is so much to take into account and well, the narrative has to be quite logical. Otherwise, you get confused, and I don't want that. And then, well, that's why it's not so easy. Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you, everyone. So the next episode is there already in the schedule. There will be, so next weekend going to look a little different because I have a birthday on Friday and hopefully on Saturday I will be, doing a birthday tour. As you know, you are part of my virtual family and you're all invited. I will schedule the tour shortly. I need to finalize a few details before I can officially invite you to this virtual party kind of thing. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dolly. Thank you. My voice is already a bit tired, but thank you for putting up with this. I need more light, but yeah, well, nevertheless. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your interest in my tours. So next time we meet in the Holy Sepulchre Church is going to be about the rest, the uh, the the three more stations, and we are even going to see what's there inside in the Aedicule. And when I was in Israel this summer, I was also able to go inside. Normally, before the pandemic, before the war, there were and in between after the pandemic, when everything kind of got back to normal, the lines were incredible. People would be staying for hours just to be able to get inside the tomb, and the empty tomb, and just they could be there for 15 seconds, and then well, I was lucky because there were no lines, and I filmed it, which I wasn't supposed to do. But you're not allowed to film in the Aedicule, but I did. So I'm also going to add a little bit of the most recent footage to the video, and hopefully I'll be able to come up with some new discoveries. But it's going to be kind of a little bit of unofficial, kind of off the record, because again, as I said, it hasn't been published yet. Because the works are not even over yet. So who knows what they have discovered just today. I'm allowed to skip the line if I am with the individuals, but if not when I'm with a group. And if I'm on my own, yeah, I can also do that, but I didn't even have to ask for it because there were no lines. Well, there was a little bit of a line when I was with my tourists there. As you know, I was lucky to even to guide, a family couple during my last week in Israel, and there were some 40 people waiting, but because it was only with the two people, I was allowed to skip the line, of course, of course. But if you're with a group, no, that's not going to happen because that's not how it works. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for finding time to spend either 1 hour or 8 hours of your weekend with me. Thank you. I'm always happy to see you, even if it's just a 5 minutes, hello. It's always nice to hang out with you. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you. And thank you for your support. I will see you next weekend for another bundle of interesting experiences. Bye bye, everyone.